Hi, thanks for joining me. My name is Mindy Mandell, and today I'm going to talk about the dialogue Menexenus. It's a short little dialogue that's not a very famous one, but it is an interesting one. Now, on the surface, Socrates is talking about the history of Athens, and there's quite a bit about different wars, for example, that Athens has fought. And so that's often the way it's treated in academia as a look at history. However, anyone who's familiar with the Republic, and specifically with that analogy of the city-state to the soul that runs throughout the Republic, if you're familiar with that, you're going to recognize a lot of the same sorts of things going on here. And so it gives it another level of meaning. Socrates is going to be talking about the aristocracy, and from a historical perspective, that gives you the surface story. But knowing what aristocracy means in the Republic, you can see that lower, that deeper level of meaning. And so that's what I'm really going to focus on here. So it starts off, and by the way, all of our translations are by Benjamin Jowett. It starts off with Socrates talking to a young man named Menexenus who is about to enter into society. And we did meet Menexenus once before in one of the early dialogues called Lysis. He was a teenager. This was a dialogue about friendship, where Socrates was confusing these young boys about what friendship really is. We met Menexenus there. Also, he is mentioned in the Phaedo also as one of the people who was present at the execution of Socrates. So he's someone who was a student of Socrates and who stayed with him for all of Socrates' life. So Socrates says here, I see that you, believing yourself to have arrived at the end of education and of philosophy, and to have had enough of them, are mounting upward to things higher still. And though rather young for the post, you are intending to govern us elder men, like the rest of your family, which has always provided someone who kindly took care of us. Menexenus replies, Yes, Socrates, I shall be ready to hold office if you allow and advise that I should, but not if you think otherwise. Okay, so he does respect Socrates. And then Menexenus explains that he went to the council chamber. He heard that the council was about to choose someone who was to speak over the dead. And he asked Socrates, do you know there's to be a public funeral? And Socrates does. So this is the pretense for the dialogue, for the whole action of this dialogue. Menexenus wants to be chosen to give this speech as a way of introducing himself on the public stage. Well, we see that Socrates has a very low opinion of rhetoric, and he expresses it here as well. He's expressed it in some other dialogues, such as the Gorgias. We see it again here. He says, O Menexenus, death in battle is certainly in many respects a noble thing. The dead man gets a fine and costly funeral, although he may have been poor, and an elaborate speech is made over him by a wise man who has long ago prepared what he has to say, although he who is praised may not have been good for much. The speakers praise him for what he has done and for what he has not done. That is the beauty of them. And they steal away our souls with their embellished words. Well, Menexenus replies, You're always making fun of the rhetorician, Socrates. This time, however, I am inclined to think that the speaker who is chosen will not have much to say, for he has been called upon to speak at a moment's notice, and he will be compelled almost to improvise. But Socrates will hear nothing of that. He says, But why, my friend, should he not have plenty to say? Every rhetorician has speeches ready-made, nor is there any difficulty in improvising that sort of stuff. So he has a very low opinion of this kind of speech. Socrates goes on to talk about his own education in rhetoric. He says that I should be able to speak is no great wonder, Menexenus, considering that I have an excellent mistress in the art of rhetoric, she who has made so many good speakers, and one who was the best among all the Hellenes, Pericles, the son of Xanthippus. And who is she? I suppose that you mean Aspasia. Yes, I do. And besides her, I had Conus, the son of Metrobius, as a master, and he was my master in music as she was in rhetoric. So that was Socrates' education. He studied music with a man named Conus, and He also studied rhetoric with this woman named Aspasia, who had also been the teacher of the great Pericles. So Socrates is well trained in rhetoric, and really the bulk of this dialogue is his sample speech of the kind of speech that you give in this situation when someone went over the dead. So there's a little bit at the beginning here, this introduction that brings us into the speech. There's going to be a little bit at the end, but basically the whole dialogue is Socrates' speech. And so another way that this is treated in universities is to look at it as an example of rhetoric. And there is going to be some very flowery language and following the rules of rhetoric. But again, I want to look more at the substance and look at it specifically as how it can be understood in terms of that analogy of the city-state to the soul and what the aristocracy meant in the Republic. We're going to carry that here as well. The aristocracy, remember, was, and for those of you who did not see my videos on the Republic, I'll just briefly explain that in the Republic, the aristocracy, it literally means rule of the best, and it refers to the best part of the soul, the wisdom-loving part of the soul, being what guides that person. So the wise person, the healthy soul, he called the aristocratic soul. Not at all meant to imply that our actual aristocracies around the world are really rule of the best. That said, here's his introduction. He does follow the basic rules of rhetoric. You say what you're going to say, you say it, and then you summarize what you said. So here he's giving us his summary or his introduction of what he's going to say. Wherefore, let us first of all praise the goodness of their birth, talking about the people who had died. Secondly, their nurture and education. And then let us set forth how noble their actions were and how worthy of the education which they had received. So 4 parts. So we can think of the first part, praising the goodness of their birth, is what are their causes? And he's really going to focus here on the gods. Where did they come from? And then there's also their education, or the things that influence them. So you can think of this as nature and nurture. And then from here, how do they function? The nobility of their actions. And finally, you have the implications of it all, the worthiness of their education, the value of living wisely. So we're looking at the wise soul here. And what we see here, causes, influences, function, and implications. This is really dialectic. You look at what a thing is and how it functions. And when we're looking at what a thing is, in metaphysics, we always look to the causes. The influences and function, that's actions, but you can think of it as passive and active functioning. And then the implications, tying it all together. So these are the stages of dialectic. This dialogue here does not go specifically into dialectic, so I'm not going to go into that. I did talk about it in some other places, but if you are familiar with dialectic, then you will recognize this pattern. Okay, that said, we're going to start with causes. And he says, the country is worthy to be praised, not only by us, but by all mankind. First and above all is being dear to the gods. He's talking here the country of Athens. And so their cause is the gods. And then he ties humanity to the gods by saying that humans are superior to the rest in understanding, and we alone have justice and religion. Now, you might argue that maybe some intelligent animals like pigs or dolphins do have some degree of understanding, and maybe they have a sense of fairness. They probably don't have religion. We don't know what's going on, of course, in the head of a pig or a dog or any other animal, but we can guess that probably humans are the only ones who reason. And so that is our connection to the divine, he's saying. In terms of the influences, government is the nurture of man, and the government of good men is good, and of bad men bad. So in this dialogue, rather than talking about the education in detail as he did in the Republic, here he's talking about government as being what nurtures us, what raises us. If you have a healthy government, if you're living in a society of wise people, you're going to be raised more wisely than if you're in a society of people who are not wise. And so that's what he's pointing out here. And of course, government can be taken on 2 levels. Your own, the way you govern yourself personally, the way you govern yourself personally, and then also the government of the country you live in. Neither is a man rejected from weakness or poverty or obscurity of origin, nor honored by reason of the opposite, as in other states. But there is one principle here in Athens. He who appears to be wise and good is a governor and ruler. So he's talking here about the healthiness of the people in this aristocracy. So if you have this healthy state of soul that he's comparing to aristocracy, then you judge people by their character, not by the silly things that most people judge by. So, we often hear we shouldn't judge people. Of course, what we really mean is we shouldn't judge ignorantly, or we shouldn't judge foolishly. We don't judge people by the way they look or how wealthy they are. You judge them by their character. And that's really what he's getting at here. So did this our land Athens prove that she was the mother of men, for in those days she alone and first of all brought forth wheat and barley for human food, which is the best and noblest sustenance for man, whom she regarded as her true offspring. Now you can see this as an example of flowery rhetoric, but it also serves another purpose. In the Republic, there was an idea that ran throughout that the soul of the healthy person must be united. All the parts of the soul come together. And this was expressed in Book 5 of the Republic by suggesting a society where all the children are raised together, taken away from their parents, so that you don't know who is your biological child. And therefore, everyone in that society is like a child or a parent or a sibling or grandparent, depending on their age. And that creates a kind of unity in the society. Now here, he's not talking about the same sort of thing, since Athens is not that type of government, does not have that sort of system. Instead, he's suggesting that Athens herself, the land, is the mother of everyone. And as everybody's mother, then we are all the children of Athens, and that creates that idea of unity. So on the surface, we don't have to care about the way the society actually runs. Plato was never suggesting that we really should have a society where the children are taken away from their parents. He was instead focusing on the state of soul. And the way he expressed it in the Republic was by having children raised together. The way he expresses it here in Menexenus is what we're seeing on the screen right now. That Athens, as everybody's mother, means we're all the children of Athens, or they are all the children of Athens. And so there's that idea of unity within the city-states. And because of this, he can then say this: but we and our citizens are brethren, the children all of one mother, and we do not think it right to be one another's masters or servants. But the natural equality of birth compels us to seek for legal equality, and to recognize no superiority except in the reputation of virtue and wisdom. So again, this is the healthy, wise state of mind. Okay, going on then to how they functioned. Now there are different, he's focusing here on wars, I should point out. That looking at different wars that the Athenians fought, and he's going to focus on 3 different levels: fighting the barbarians or the foreigners, fighting other Greeks, and then also civil war. And as we saw in the Republic, when he talks about fighting foreigners or barbarians, as they called them, he's talking about false beliefs that you want to kick out of your soul. They don't belong in your soul. They're outsiders. And so you want to kick them out. And so you're very harsh with the barbarians. But in terms of fighting other Greeks, here I think we can see it as when you're dealing with other people who are part of a wisdom tradition, who are also trying to be healthy souls, then you would act differently. You want to have a kind of unity together. And so that's about the way that a wise person would function in a group of other wise people. And then civil war, of course, within your own soul, kicking out false beliefs, but always with the intention of the soul being united again. And so we're going to see different ways of dealing with foreigners, with other Greeks, and then civil war. And talking about these heroic acts in war, he says, they were the deeds of men who thought that they ought to fight both against Hellenes for the sake of Hellenes or Greeks, on behalf of freedom, and against barbarians in the common interest of Hellas. He says that our countrymen, after defeating them in a naval engagement and taking their leaders, the Spartans, at Sphagalia, I'm sorry, got that wrong, Sphagia, when they might have destroyed them, they spared their lives and gave them back and made peace, considering that they should war with their fellow countrymen only until they gained a victory over them, and not because of the private anger of the state destroy the common interest of Hellas, but that with barbarians they should war to the death. So you fight differently against other Greeks versus foreigners. So fighting other Greeks would be kind of like in the Buddhist tradition, there's the idea of Dharma combat, challenging other people who are also students to see whose insights are deeper. That kind of thing, when as soon as you gain a victory, if you're right, but then, you make up and everything is fine and you're not really fighting with each other. And if the other person has a higher vision, you don't hate them for it, you don't feel defeated, you thank them for teaching you something. But when you're fighting the barbarians, as he's calling them here, this is about kicking out false beliefs from your soul. And now here's a point that I think has many parallels within the Republic. We were never conquered by others, and to this day we are still unconquered by them. But we were our own conquerors, and we received defeat at our own hands. There was an idea all throughout the Republic, the idea that we have to hold on to the unity in our soul. We have to create unity, and then once we have it, we have to guard the unity that we have gained. Here's a quote from Republic Book 5 that I think you'll see some parallels with. And of course, this quote is from Paul Shorey, who I used all throughout my videos on the Republic. Do we know of any greater evil for a state than the thing that distracts it and makes it many instead of one, or a greater good than that which binds it together and makes it one? So this idea of needing unity to be healthy, that is the condition of a healthy soul, is that it functions as a unity. It's guided by the wisdom in the soul, and the desires all fall in line with what is wise and good for the soul, and we don't desire things that we know are bad for the soul. So holding on to that unity is key. Now let's go on to look at civil war. The idea of holding on to that unity brings us into this idea of how to deal with false beliefs when they arise within the soul, so that you can again get back to that state of unity. Afterward there was quiet and peace abroad, but there sprang up war at home. And if men are destined to have civil war, no one could have desired that his city should take the disorder in a milder form. How joyful and natural was the reconciliation of those who came from the Piraeus and those who came from the city. And with what moderation did they order the war against the tyrants in Eleusis, and in a manner how unlike what the other Hellenes expected. And the reason of this gentleness was the veritable tie of blood, which created among them a friendship as of kinsmen, faithful not in word only, but in deed. And this also then brings us to the idea of, in the Republic Book 8, we saw how a person might slip from that healthy state of mind that he called the aristocracy into a lower state of mind. The first one he slipped into is called a timocracy. And the way that happens is by not paying attention to your states of mind and letting false beliefs slip in. And so we see here that a civil war is when you are aware and you do fight those false beliefs, and you do challenge them and kick them out. And that such was the fact, we ourselves are witnesses, who are of the same race with them, and have mutually received and granted forgiveness of what we have done and suffered. And after this there was perfect peace, and the city had rest. Okay, so if you don't watch your state of mind, it's going to slip. And we saw that throughout books 8 and 9 of the Republic, the different levels, the different constitutions, as he called them, that you slip down from. However, if you are paying attention to your states of mind and you are keeping your energy high and your awareness high, then you can achieve this state of perfect peace. And he says the city or the soul has rest. And if a person desired to bring a deserved accusation against our city, he would find only one charge which he could justly urge, that she was too compassionate and too favorable to the weaker side. This is the situation when you're not guarding the false beliefs and you let them come in. You're too soft towards those false beliefs that are coming in. Okay, the implication. So here we're going to get a few wise words at the end. Again, there's some flowery rhetorical language here, but also we're seeing what he's saying about this healthy state of soul. He says, remember our words then, and whatever is your aim, let virtue be the condition of the attainment of your aim, and know that without this, all possessions and pursuits are dishonorable and evil or unhealthy. And so we should always be guided by virtue. The ends justify the means is not something that Socrates agreed with. We're always guided by virtue. That's the healthy state of mind. And then one final quote here. And all knowledge, when separated from justice and virtue, is seen to be cunning and not wisdom. Wherefore make this your first and last and constant and all-absorbing aim, to exceed, if possible, not only us, but all your ancestors in virtue. To be excelled by you is a source of happiness for us. So when you're in that healthy state of mind, you're not jealous of others, you're not competitive with others. You can celebrate their own successes and their own virtue. And in fact, when people you consider your offspring are growing in virtue, then that is a source of happiness for you. And so that is a look at this healthy state of mind. It's a good dialogue, I think, to look at after the Republic, because it has so many parallels with it, and it does in a way kind of carry on from the Republic in the sense that it shows us that state of mind in action. It has a lot of parallels to Book 5 of the Republic. And so for those of you who are interested in going a little deeper than just watching videos, you might want to go back to Book 5 of the Republic, see how he talked about, for example, fighting foreigners and civil war, and then look at this dialogue and match them up and compare them. So it's kind of an interesting exercise to do. So this really wraps up all of the middle dialogues. We've now done all of the early dialogues and all of the middle dialogues. And then from next time, then we're going to go on to the later dialogues. I haven't yet decided which one I'm going to start with, so there's a bit of a cliffhanger there. I hope that you'll join me though. And if you don't already subscribe, I hope that you'll think about it, because I do put out a new video each week. I may not be able to next week. I'm not sure. There'll be one either next week or the week after. My kids are on holiday, and I do have to think about which one I'm going to do next, so it's going to take a little more time. So I'm not sure I'll be able to have one next week. But if you subscribe, you will get a notification when I do have the next video out, and there will be one within the next 2 weeks, I guess. Also, if you like what you see, I'd appreciate you hitting the like button. And also, if you have any questions or comments, you can put them in the comments section below or drop me an email. And I do hope that you'll join me next time. Thank you very much.